Please note that the discussion points we cover in this podcast are our own views or those of the guest speakers and do not constitute as financial advice. We always recommend that you speak with a professional before considering your own situation and taking action.
Welcome back to our podcast, On Her Terms, where money meets real life, careers, families, relationships, and everything in between. I'm Jodie.
I'm Yaz.
And today we are speaking about money and relationships. Money has such a big impact on relationships. In relationships, it's often the topic of arguments. But even if you aren't in a relationship, money has such an impact on being single, getting into new relationships, separating. So it should be a good podcast today. So
I've been excited for this one.
Yeah, me too. So Yaz is, as we said before, she's getting married this year. So very much in a relationship. So you've kind of got that lens on it.
Yes.
I am a single mum, been through divorce. So opposite ends of the spectrum there. But also, obviously, we meet so many different people in our jobs. And help them manage money and their relationships. So hopefully it'll give you awesome top tips to take away today. So before we dive in, shall we go through our wins and wobbles?
Let's do it.
The episode. So what would you say is your win today?
Bit of a boring one, but a bit of a tech win. I have learnt how to schedule send an email because I don't know whether you find this, the school run, so for me the nursery drop off, is like prime time, and I know I've got an inbox full from either the day before or I need to send some out, or I just know it's there. So the evening before Bertie's gone to bed, I schedule my emails for the morning.
You're so organised.
You're
so organised. I just pop mine out at midnight.
Like, whoa. Yeah, that has been massive. So I can do the nursery drop off and I'm like, oh, that's done. And then I feel
okay, that's nice. It's a good win.
It's a good win.
So mine's probably a little bit different to yours. So I really outdid myself with getting to the petrol station. I'd been on empty for a very long time. I do often drive around on the empty because I know that after it says 0, there's probably another 20 miles in the tank. But today I think I overstretched that 20 miles. So when I got to the petrol station and filled up with petrol, I was very, very chuffed with myself. Big win.
I'm filling up my car when I hit 50 miles before
really?
my light's even on. That's the type of
You would be
person.
very anxious in my car.
It's like, I'm not even going to make it there. Who knows?
What's your wobble?
So speaking of nursery drop-offs, I don't think we had the best night's sleep. Took Bertie to nursery, had walked all the way from home to nursery, got there and I was thinking, people are looking at me a bit funny. Looked down and I'm wearing 2 different pairs of shoes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Got a statement.
So, yeah, then I had to proceed to stand there sort of 10, 15 minutes waiting. But it was Bertie's turn to come out.
What shoes were they?
Just 2 completely different pairs of trainers, not even the same colour.
Okay, wow.
So that really humbled me.
So I think you're going to like my wobble.
Go on.
So I was told the other day by a client that I look like a celebrity.
Yeah.
So there's me thinking, what, Beyonce?
Yeah.
Who's it going to be? No, but the celebrity that I look like, Brian Cox. The astrologer who's a man.
Jodie, the first thing is...
What were you going to say?
I think I can see it.
No, that's the worst thing. When I Googled him, I was like, actually, I can see it. It's the mouth, it's the eyes, it's the hair colour.
It's the lips. It's the lips.
But yeah, it wasn't the answer I wanted.
Of Brian Cox. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How do you face that in a client setting?
At first I was like, Brian, that's
Bryony?
the male name, Brian.
Thank you.
Knocked me down a peg or two, I can say.
I love that. No, brilliant.
So yeah, anyway, right, let's move on. So we're talking about money and relationships today. So Yaz.
Yes, I think this is such a hot topic. Just when I speak about it with friends, I don't know, it's massive. Sorry, Brian Cox is still coming back to me.
Sorry, I really threw you up. I should have given you warning for that one.
Brian. Yeah, I think it's a massive conversation piece. And I think just starting, it's actually, when you think about it, two people coming into a relationship and actually even friendships, and though you've come from two completely different backgrounds, two completely different upbringings, so your experience of money could be completely different. And I think actually establishing that is so important. So clients coming in, I can immediately see, like I can just identify the two different patterns and
Like
behaviors
the role
and
models
the
they've
role.
had. I think we
Yeah.
all remember those kind of like sayings that our parents would say to us.
Yes.
So for me, my mum would always say like, buy cheap, buy twice. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, in my
You've
head, I'm like,
got
right, I want
that.
to buy quality rather than
Mm-hmm.
buy the same thing twice. And then the other thing I'd always hear is money doesn't grow on trees.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
think everyone has those little kind
Everyone
of like
has
memories of
those.
our early childhood and
Yeah.
how they impact us.
And I think for a lot of people, especially at home, like one might be the saver and one might be the spender.
Hmm.
So it's tackling those dynamics. I think that's probably a really big thing we see. Um, and how you both approach money as well. Like that's a massive piece in itself. So I think there's so much to dissect in this topic, and even just the fun stuff, like when you start dating someone all the way through to like marriage and what retirement looks like for the both of you. Then when you're thinking, or just thinking about children, um it's
Yeah,
huge.
I think the biggest mistake I see people make
Mm,
is not speaking about it.
yeah,
I think that's where resentment
can
grows.
come in.
I
Yeah.
see a lot of people who, for example, one of my friends is like, oh, we're putting a fairly new relationship,
Mm,
we're putting 50-50 in for all the bills,
mm-hmm,
but he earns a lot more than her.
mm-hmm.
So there's like a resentment there because she's thinking,
Yes.
actually, this doesn't feel fair for me
Yeah.
because she has less money to spend, say. So I think you need to sit down and speak about it because
Mm,
half the time the other person might not have even thought about it in that way.
yeah.
And it might not be that they wouldn't manage it a different way. It's just because you haven't had the discussion.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
How do you and Harry manage money?
Yeah, it is interesting because we are polar opposites. So we've had this conversation a lot. I probably need to take, or I had to take on board what you're saying and actually have the conversation, because my background, I sort of touched on before, we didn't really have much of it, or it was always something that was like quite an anxiety in the household. So I didn't want to talk about it. I've always been fiercely independent, and that's my own. It's separate. And then you come into a relationship, and actually, you do have to have those discussions. Harry has come from a household where it's spoken about a lot, and it's normal. And so us merging, I found it really difficult because I was thinking, oh my God, he's like asking me a lot of questions
Oh,
here.
really?
Yeah, I found
Yeah.
it so strange. And he's just super open, and he probably found it really
Well done,
hard.
Harry.
Well done, Harry. He was kind of like probing and probably thinking, well, she's not really like open to talking about it, like what's going on.
Yeah.
So that has been a work in progress. And I do think that's important. You're not going to get it right straight away. I think we very much or still are learning
Yeah.
how to talk
And
about
do you have
it.
like a joint bills account, joint spending account? Like
Yeah.
what's the kind of nitty gritty of how you actually manage day to day?
Yeah, and actually this was massive because going on maternity leave, that had to be a massive piece. And so we have a joint savings account, bills come out. Well, I say a joint current account, and then we
Yeah.
have a joint savings account that we can both chip into. That goes for things like the wedding and that kind of the next house. But I've always been a massive advocate for having our own accounts and our own savings.
Mm.
So we have, yeah, our own current account and our own savings account as well.
Yeah.
Because I just said from the off, like,
I think
that's
it's
really
so important. And I
important.
think one thing I see a lot and something I'm so passionate about
Mm,
is in a couple, especially like a long-term relationship,
mm-hmm.
there always seems to be one person who takes full control of the money.
Yeah.
Well, not always, but a lot of the time. One
Yeah.
person who deals with finances and one person who doesn't.
Mm,
And that's fine. Like you don't need to both be doing the same job, you know? If it's being done by one of you, that's fine. But one piece of advice I'd give to everybody is make sure you pay attention, even if it's a couple of times a year. Oh, so what have we got in savings? What have we got? What
Don't
debts have we
let
got?
one person.
No, because,
Yeah.
if you're renewing the mortgage, like get involved, understand what's actually happening on the big financial decisions. And the reason I say this is because you never know what's around the corner. You never know what life might throw at you.
Yeah.
I work closely with clients going through divorce. I work very frequently, should I say. And the biggest thing I come across is, for example, typical relationship. The man has for 20 years taken full control of the finances. The woman is not only having to navigate this separation, but is completely overwhelmed and anxious because they don't understand like what's even in place. So they've then got to decide, how are we going to separate this money? But they don't even understand like what savings they've got, what pension they've got, what that means, what income they have, what outgoings they have. So not only have they got to go through this massive life transition, they've got to fully understand that. So even if you're in the strongest relationship ever, just pay attention, because unfortunately other things like, someone could pass away and you're not only grieving, but you're then having to manage everything.
And I think I find, and you've probably found the same, is I get a lot of people, or specifically women, who are going through the separation, and they always say to me, I wish I'd done this sooner. I was just scared because of the finances. And that's massive. So making that difference, being kind of in tune with the finances earlier on, as much as we hate to think about, things might end and not work out, you're less likely to feel stuck in a situation because of the financial side of it. So make sure that you're always okay, or at least aware.
Yeah,
So
have your own independent bank account and be aware of the signs of financial control. That's something that's like massive at the moment, is, coercive control and people gradually taking control of your finances and, limiting what you can spend. You having the feeling of, I can't do this because they'll be angry, even though it's your joint money. But read up on it, like, take notice of them, little unsettling feelings you get. Because that is, it's massive that people can control your finances. And it's not a very nice place to be.
I found it really strange, actually, and I imagine sort of a lot of women in the same boat going into maternity leave, that was massive, because suddenly you do become a bit more financially dependent on the other person. So I always knew that going into that, I wanted to have my own funds set aside. So that's where like my own current account, my own savings account was massive. And Harry's great. He was very much, I can do this, I can do that. But it was, for me, it was, no, I want to do this and I need to be able to do that. So I think making sure that kind of getting into relationships, you're having those discussions earlier on.
And I think, like you said about maternity leave, my sister is in the, like, an officer in the Navy, so she's always been so career minded and had her own money. She had children a little bit later on, so she's enjoyed spending her money, and then she had to go on maternity leave.
It's a shock.
And she, her and her partner manage money very differently. But my advice to her was like, right, you need to have these conversations. Like, don't just wing it and think everything's going to be okay, because make a plan that you're both happy with. Sit down together. How are we going to manage paying for childcare? How are we going to manage, the bridge whilst I'm on maternity pay? And I think the biggest mistake people make is not having those open conversations.
I agree. And I think the earlier on in the relationship you can do that, I think the more natural it feels. I think I'm lucky in that Harry is the opposite, and he kind of really probed and pushed to have the chat. And even though I'm in this space, just my own personal experience, I still found that really difficult. So that made maternity leave feel easier, and wedding planning. And then obviously we're both self-employed, so that's a whole thing in itself. And I think sort of what I say to people, or what I think they should take note of, is it doesn't have to be 50-50, but almost like what you were saying earlier, maybe you look at doing things based on salary and income and earnings. I don't know whether you have that discussion.
Like percentages. Like if they earn, X amount more than you, then they put in X amount more into the bills. I think that's quite a common way people like to manage things. But also have them open conversations. If, your partner's living with you and they're not paying you rent, like, that's not fair.
No.
Speak about it. Like, it's not fair. And the easiest thing is to just, not speak out about it. But actually, you need to have those discussions, because it's not fair. And then that resentment builds, and then it will cause friction. But the other thing to be aware of is, I made a mistake. So when I was young, with one of my first long-term boyfriends. It's like taking on joint debts.
Yeah.
But we took on like a car,
Mm.
but it was in my name. Not long after we separated.
Mm.
But obviously this contract is in my name.
Mm-hmm.
So I think any financial decisions you're making is just be really aware and like, actually, how would that feel if you are suddenly if it's in just your name, how will it feel if you are suddenly, having to pay for that on your own?
Yeah.
If we all go into relationships thinking they're, forever, and marriages thinking they're forever.
Yeah.
But I think 50% of marriages end in divorce. Sorry, not
Oh,
something I should be telling someone who's getting married this year. But I'm there to help if it goes wrong.
Jodie.
But it's being realistic and actually thinking, what worst case. I think you lived with. You've got a story there as well, haven't you?
I think especially when you're young. So I was probably 18, 19, and I bought a flat with my first long-term boyfriend, which is so young to do that anyway. And we'd been together a while but hadn't lived together. And I think we separated probably 6 months after.
Oh, wow.
And I think so much of that decision I put off because, I mean, obviously when you look back in hindsight, that relationship wasn't right in the first place. But you're young and you're going with it. And yeah, I think I put off that decision because I felt stuck then in that situation. And it was suddenly, okay, not only is the relationship ending, it was, oh my gosh, now we've got a mortgage and we've not had it for very long and we've got a property.
Mortgages are harder to get out of than the actual divorce itself. Like that's like when I see all the time like people who own a house together, and it's very rare that one person can take that mortgage on.
Yeah.
So, and it's quite often that people want to stay in the house.
Yes.
So it's mortgages are a big commitment. Don't take that decision lightly.
No. And you know what I say to people now, and it was probably coming into one of my tips for later on, is I've always said from that point, rent before you buy. So Harry and I, we did a year of renting, and then we ended up survived just about. I thought, I think I can buy with this person. So then we bought, and I think the dynamics, you really get to know somebody when you live with them. Things come into play like bills and just everyday life. You're not going from just spending a bit of quality time. You're actually living with that person.
Yeah, so seeing all their weird quirks.
All the weird quirks when they leave the toilet seat open and they don't pick up.
Driving on no petrol.
Yeah, driving on no petrol. Yeah, I think that's massive. So like you said, a mortgage is a big commitment, and I learned that the hard way earlier on. So a good caveat is just test living with someone before you go into that big commitment.
Definitely.
But then I had the flip side. I've only had 3 long-term relationships, just the caveat.
Can't keep track.
My second was the complete opposite, and I'd gone from making a massive commitment really early on to my second long-time partner being like, turning around one day and saying, I'm in the process of buying my own place. And I remember thinking, where do I fit in this? Like, do you not see me? And so I think there's actually 2 ends of the spectrum where you can become maybe too quick, and the other is actually they're super financially independent and haven't taken you into consideration, or you've not had that discussion. So I really think it does boil down to open communication, looking at your upbringings, what you've experienced in the past, and where you both want to go and where you both want to see yourself. But it's interesting from the dating phase to like the long-term phase, because I feel like I'm living vicariously through you and the dating experience.
There's not much happening there at the moment.
Like, spill the tea. But I wondered, like, I think a lot of people, and when I listen to other podcasts, hot topic is like dating, looking out for things then. Who pays for the first date?
Yeah.
How do you...
And for someone who works in like, my world is money, right?
Yeah.
And it's still awkward, isn't it?
Yes.
It's still awkward. That bill comes out and you're like, like, let's pay half. But yeah, it's a tricky one. But I think the other thing I was going to note is obviously I have been through a divorce, right? So I've had to unpick like marriage, mortgage, kids.
Yeah.
And I think one word of advice for anybody who's going through that transition is things aren't going to be perfect straight away.
Yeah.
you're going from 2 incomes to 1 income. So there's going to have to be changes. And I think as soon as you know, like, the next chapter of your life, see it as a stepping stone. You know, you're not going to have that perfect house. You're not going to live exactly where you want to live. It's not forever though. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, actually don't put too much pressure on yourself to, if you've come from, you know, a 4-bedroom house, semi-detached house in a great area, like, realistically, it's going to have to look a little bit different for a while, and stop trying to focus on things being perfect straight away. It's knowing that there is going to be that kind of period of time where you're trying to figure things out. And yeah, but what I will say is there is light at the end of the tunnel. There really is. Like, what I love is seeing when have got clients from, like, you know, when I first meet them, completely overwhelmed, anxious about money, going through this horrible separation. Like we said before, like, take bite size. Don't think about everything you've got to do. Think about a little step each week. You know, it might be that week 1, I'm going to understand my income and my outgoings. Week 2, I'm going to have a look what, you know, assets I've got, what debts I've got, you know, little chunks. But what I love is when I see a client, say, like, a year or 2
I was
later,
going to say this,
and how far they've come, and you know that things will get better, and it can be really overwhelming. But also, I think there are things that you can do during a relationship. Not that you necessarily think things are going to go wrong, but if you've got those, you know, the key things in place, like understanding what you've got coming in, what you've got going out, what are your assets and what are your debts, then if anything does go wrong, you're one step ahead, you know?
Yeah, and I think because we see it so often, and we've probably both felt it, that feeling of I think I want to leave this relationship, but I feel stuck and I don't know how to.
Money keeps so many people.
I think
I know,
so.
like, even like in my own circles, like people who are just stuck because of money, and it has such a big impact, doesn't it? And it is really hard. And but yeah, things do fall into place for you.
And don't feel afraid to reach out to a professional, especially if you are going through the divorce process.
Yeah.
Having sort of your solicitor and your lawyer there, but also a financial planner, that can make a massive space, because it's what happens after the separation as well. And how do you then go forward, especially if you have been used to someone being in control of the finances and suddenly you've got to do that for yourself.
Yeah.
Having someone to lean on that's a professional in that space is massive, but also your own circle of people. I think we should encourage that more. I don't know whether it's just like a culture
I
thing.
think it's like a British thing as
It
well,
is.
isn't it?
We're
Like
we just don't talk about
Yeah.
it. And I think it takes a while when you meet someone, like a client in a meeting, to actually sort of break down that barrier a little bit, and then
Yeah.
to get the conversation flowing, which is to be expected because it's obviously super personal. But I think we should get better at just talking
Yeah,
about
with your
it.
friends, your family. It doesn't have to be a partner, but just speaking about money. But
Yeah.
what have you seen? Like, have you had any meetings with clients and kind of,
Yeah.
you know,
I have. I had one recently whereby the husband had actually taken on a lot of debt and hadn't shared with the wife, and luckily they'd had this discussion prior to the meeting, so it wasn't like a surprise. But we then had to unpick all of that and have that discussion around, okay, where was there a lack of communication? What could have been done differently? And I think then there was obviously the resentment, because not only was some of that his debt, there was also joint debt. And, that's massive, because you need to think about the impact you're having on somebody else if in those scenarios. So that was a big piece. So we really stripped it down to communication, what would be different going forward. They'd managed to clear the debt. That was amazing. That was a win. But I think that had happened because he'd spoken about it, and she was able to put her hat on and say, okay, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
We don't bury our head in the sand anymore. So that was massive. And I do think I've seen snippets of that with kind of other clients as well.
Yeah. I think the most common thing I've seen is people, like, one person having debts that
Yeah.
they've hidden from the other.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, that's not going to go away.
No.
It's not going to go away. And then it could suddenly crop up when you're doing a mortgage application
Yeah.
or a time you really don't want it to.
Yeah.
So the top tip there, I'd say, is don't bury your head in the sand.
Communication.
And then the other thing I see often is the other end of the spectrum, people hiding assets.
Yeah.
And especially if they're about to go through a divorce or separation, or they're going through that, actually having, secret savings accounts or things that they're squirreling away. yeah, so I think just the main thing there is being really open with that.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'd say is really important, and I know we're about to get onto this, is top tips of moving in together. But if you are moving into somebody's house that's not yours,
Yeah.
or you've got someone moving into your house, I would 100% recommend get a legal agreement drawn up. Like have a discussion about, okay, so if, you know, you're living together, you're contributing to their mortgage, or, you know, you're not, whatever the situation may be, if things go wrong, what's that going to look like?
Yeah.
Because you can speak to a solicitor and get an agreement in place that, you know, if you separate, you pay that person X amount, or, you know, because I have seen many scenarios when it can get really messy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be, just because it's not your house doesn't mean that they can't then make a claim on the property. So I think being really, wise to that and making sure you've got agreements in place if you are going to make big decisions is really important.
And especially around, there's certain scenarios whereby someone might be putting more of the deposit down, but someone's income might be used to fund more of the mortgage repayments, and there needs to be a good agreement on how that's going to work. And again, I know when you're buying a house, the last thing you want to think about is if it doesn't work, because, you know, this is a really exciting time in your life. But you do have to have those conversations.
Yeah, and if you have them conversations and have an agreement in place, hopefully you'll never have to go through that.
Yes.
But if you do, then at least it's one less thing to worry about.
Exactly that.
And marriage is there. Obviously, it's a legal contract, right? You're legally going into a contract to say that everything you own is joint.
Yeah.
So it's a massive financial commitment.
It is big.
It's massive. Be careful. But on the flip side, if you are in a long-term relationship and you're not married, and all the assets are in their name, that's also a big risk. So it's like, actually, you know, you've been living there. You may have moved into your partner's house she has a big house and, you know, nice car and everything, but you have nothing in your name. 10, 15 years later, you separate, then you've not built anything for yourself.
And I know this exact scenario. I've got a family member in this. She's a business owner. She's had 2 kids. She's moved in with her longtime partner. They're not married, but they've got kids together. She's obviously taken time off work to raise the children, started going back to running her business, but she's always so conscious that actually she's moved into his place, it's in his name, his mortgage. She's covering bills, but at the end of, if that was to not work, what does she have to show for it? And she's lost out on pension contributions where she's not been working. She's had taken a reduction in income. How do you factor that in, I suppose, when it comes to a separation? So I think, again, that's where you really need to get the nitty-gritty and have these hard conversations earlier on and make sure you're happy with that before you commit to anything.
Yeah, you just need to safeguard yourself, and especially when there's other things like businesses at play, or inheritances as well. Like, that's huge in divorce.
Yes.
Like, actually, one of you's inherited a lot of money.
Yeah.
If you've brought that money into the marriage, then that could potentially be separated.
Yeah.
So just, having clarity and just thinking twice before making any decision.
Yeah.
But we were going to share some kind of solid tips for if you are thinking of moving in together. So
yes,
take it away.
My first one, obviously I've touched on already, is the renting before buying. So whether that be 6 months or a year, I think we fixed for a year, and then so we had a contract in place for where we were renting, so obviously you have to bear that in mind. We fixed in for a year, so we were going to rent together, and then we switched to like the kind of 3-month rolling contract, I think it was, and then kind of made sure we were still happy, started exploring the buying. So we weren't stuck in. But so for some people, you don't even have to fix in for a year. If you just want to rent for 6 months, 3 months, whatever it is.
Or even living at a parent's house.
Living together in a parent's house. I think the shift, it really is just getting to know that person. And I think red flags become quite...
That honeymoon period.
Exactly.
Everyone's perfect in the honeymoon period.
Yeah. And then you live together and it's not the same. I think it's it does. If there's going to be any red flags, that's when you start to see them. So, and then how you handle them together, that's a massive thing as well. If there is tension about bills, and actually how well did we have that conversation? What have we learned from it? And how's it going to work going forward? And if you can tackle that, then you're in, a pretty good situation. So, that's my takeaway, and I've learned that myself. Yeah,
I would say a big one is don't overcommit. If you're buying a house together, don't maximize
Yeah.
Don't maximize and borrow as much as you can, because that will have a massive impact on your day-to-day life. If you're renting together, you know, don't overcommit on the rent. You know, you look at what you can afford and go a little bit less.
Yeah.
And then the other one I'd say is agree on how to manage other expenses. So you might say, right, say for example, you earn exactly the same and your bills are £2,000 a month. You both put £1,000 in, but actually, how are you going to manage the food shop? Because it might be one of you's type A, like yes, and you know, really organised with the food shops, but then you might then feel resentful because you're always the one paying for the food shops. So it's like, do you then look at what you're spending on food and both put a little bit more money in there? Or, you know, what agreement you're going to come to, because that resentment can so easily build when you're thinking, right, I've bought the toilet rolls
you're
again.
Thinking, don't be drinking my milk. That's my milk.
I'm going to have my own food cupboard now.
That's so common.
I remember my sister would always, she likes the like more expensive things. But then when her partner Greg would buy things, he'd always go for like the cheap stuff.
She's like,
well, I just bought some nice, really expensive things for us, and you would buy this horrible cheap stuff. But I think having them open conversations about other expenses rather than just the essential bills is really important.
Yeah, and then again, like the savings, what are you committing to jointly? And then if you are living together, okay, making sure you're still setting aside a provision for yourself as well, and having autonomy over that. So not feeling like it's necessarily controlled by one person, like we were saying earlier. Making sure that you know where everything is, where direct debits are coming out from, what's left. Because I think I'd heard a story not that long ago, and somebody had been moving, the guy in the relationship had been taking money out their joint savings sort of every so often, every couple of months. And she had no idea until it built up to quite a large sum. And then she was like, I've just noticed that this, and I don't even know where it'd been going. So if you've got a bit of oversight yourself and you both know what's coming out, what you should be left
pay
with,
attention.
Pay attention. Yeah.
And the other thing I'd say is, if, say for example, your bills are, I don't know, £1,800 between you both put like a little bit more in, because then that can kind of save as a bit of a contingency.
We do this.
So if your boiler goes, or you know, whatever it may be, you've got that little bit of money you can dip into.
Yeah.
And have, in a relationship, this isn't really about moving house, but having like joint savings goals as well. Like discuss, you know, personally what you want to do, but actually what things you want to do together and how you're going to save
milestone.
That's exciting, right? Sort of keeps life exciting, is having those things to look forward to.
And I think you're both more likely to commit and want to save if you've got that in mind, whether that be personally or whether that is jointly. If you've both got goals for you and the relationship, you're probably more likely to both commit to those things and make sure you are actively saving. It is difficult when I think I see quite frequently different spending habits, and someone might be more of a likes to go to the pub at 3 o'clock on a Friday, and those habits trickle in.
That's hard when someone is a spender and you think, wait a minute, he's just spent another £100 at the pub and I've been really good at saving. How do you have that with Harry? How do you handle it?
He wasn't that he wasn't a good saver, but I've just always been so in tune with that, and probably also with the job. So I made sure that was a conversation we were having, and it's never prohibiting someone from doing the things they like. It's always that we can still afford to do the stuff we want.
And I think as long as your essential bills and your things that you want to achieve together are covered, then you do need a bit of autonomy. You do need to be a bit of independence on how you're spending your money.
Yeah, and it can be really easy for me, type A, to be like, oh, how much did you spend on that? And what was that? But it is important you both have your own funds, and we both work really hard, so you do the things you enjoy, but mindful that one person isn't covering all the bills and saving and trying to work to this thing together, and the other person's, you know, spending.
But having your own current account as well is so important, because even things like, you know, if it's someone's birthday coming up, you've got everything's joint. You can't surprise them. You can't buy them something without them seeing what it is.
Exactly
So having a bit of your own spending money to do what you want, and not having to explain yourself and why you've wanted to, you know, book yourself a massage or whatever it may be. That's for me. I love a massage. I don't have those problems.
I can
Single gal over there. So I think, to summarise, I think the main things we'd say, main message to get across is communication. Just communicate. And even if you are in a bad place, have that conversation early, pull your head out the sand, put a plan in place, and make sure you're on the same page.
And I think early on in relationships, when you are in the dating phase or you've been seeing each other for a while, try and see past, is it the rose tinted glasses? Is that what people say? Trying to
The
spot.
the rose tinted glasses, they're perfect.
They are
Yeah.
so perfect, and there's not a red flag in sight, but actually you need
There are, you're running towards them.
Yeah, you actually are. So I think that's I try and say to people, look, from an outside perspective, is everything as good as it seems? And I know that's really hard because you want to enjoy the honeymoon phase, but
It's time always tells,
time
isn't it?
tells, yeah.
And pay attention to your like family and friends' opinions as well, because they don't have those same glasses on.
And the little gut feels that you get, yeah.
So listeners' questions we've got today. So Yaz, someone has said they currently have everything in joint names. I mean, I feel like we've covered this, but currently have everything in joint names. Should I have things on my own?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think if it's hard now because everything's in joint names and it's tied up. So start small, start from scratch essentially. Going forward, and we like to think everything will be fine and you will never have to think that way, but make provisions starting from now. So open up your own savings account, do your little budgeting tool, work out what you've got coming in, what's going out, and then set aside what you can start putting away for you. Whether that be just a standard savings account or an investment, doesn't matter. Make sure it feels comfortable for you, but start putting things aside for yourself.
Perfect.
Your question.
Okay, hit me.
What should I be thinking about financially before separating?
Oh, that's a good one.
Big question.
I would say if you're thinking that there might be a separation on the horizon, have a real drill down on your income, your outgoings. Also, if you've got sight of their income and their outgoings, what have you both got coming in? What have you both got going out? What assets do you have? So assets as in, your house evaluation, what's the house value? What savings have you got? What pensions have you got between you? And understanding that these things are joint assets. It could be that you've been the stay-at-home mum for 15 years and your husband is the breadwinner. He's got lots of assets in his name. And I've seen so many people in this position where they think that that's not theirs, but it is. The reason that they've been able to build a big pension and a big income is because you've been the one looking after the children at home. It's a joint effort. And when you enter a marriage, you're pretty much signing a contract to say these are joint things. So even if you have nothing in your name and they have a big pension sat there, that's your pension too, and you are entitled to it. So it's not just about what you've got, it's about like what you have as a couple. So have a look. What assets have you got? Businesses, even if it's your partner's business, that's it's still part of your marriage. So what assets have you got? What debts are there? So what credit cards, overdrafts, mortgages, loans, to just have a real insight of what that is. And I guess then start thinking about what your needs could be. If you are thinking of you may need to sell the family home, what is the value of a house that you need? And what would your monthly outgoings be? So I think kind of fine tuning all of these things is really important.
And probably as well, do you find like just speaking to people and reaching out?
Speaking to people massively. I think there's always. I was like the first, pretty much out of all my friends. I was on my father divorce on my 30th birthday.
Wow.
So so I was like early in there, and at the time I was like. I worked in finance, luckily, but still I felt clueless. Like I was like, it's such a lonely feeling.
Overwhelming,
such a lonely feeling. And I think if you know like at least one other person, like I did meet someone who'd gone through it, and their advice to me was, if you know in the pit of your stomach this isn't right and you want to get out, get out. Everything else will fall into place.
Yeah.
So I think that's always what stuck in my mind, because I was worrying for so long. I knew the relationship wasn't right, but I was like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen next? And I was so worried. Then I was like, life's too short.
Yeah.
So did it. And it was hard. Don't get me wrong, it is hard. Separating is really hard to go through, and it's so much to unpick. I mean, it definitely was for the best.
Yeah.
But I think, just being talking to people. But since then, because I'm the one everyone knows is divorced. Yeah. I'm like, I've had so many friends. I'm like, now I'm 37, so I'm like, they're all kind of it's trickling in now, and I've got single friends again, which is lovely.
Which is great for a night out. And I suppose, probably seeking professional advice.
Yeah, that's what people are there for. And
Yes.
people get worried about the cost of things. But for example, paying for a good solicitor, it may mean that a much better outcome for you in the long run.
And you're not
And you don't have
stuck.
to always face that cost up front. A lot of solicitors also give like a free half an hour here or there, so you can utilise some of them. But the reason you're paying for advice, be it legal or financial, is to put you in a better position.
Yeah.
You know, we
Yeah.
say the same to our clients all the time.
All
You know,
the
if we're
time.
investing money for clients, yes, there's a fee to do it, but the reason we're doing this is to grow the money.
Yeah.
So in the long run, you're going to be better off, you know.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's what I'd say. So should we leave everybody with a top tip?
Let's go top tips. I can kick off. I would say probably everything we've spoken about, coming back to the open conversation, scheduling in time to talk about money, expectations, upbringing experiences, because that's going to shape how that sort of plays out in the relationship. So open communication, conversations, and scheduling some time to actually talk about it.
So I'll give one for single people out there. I think about your like non-negotiables, like financial non-negotiables.
Yes.
You know, if you own your own house and you earn good salary, for example, like is that a non-negotiable that you want someone at an equal playing field?
Yeah.
Like for me, getting into a relationship, I would want to make sure I'm not kind of necessarily looking after somebody. I don't know. Everyone's different, but that's my own mindset. And I guess look out for kind of financial red flags.
Yes.
You know, if you keep seeing signs of like debts and people, you know, worrying about money or like spending, gambling,
Hiding things.
Yeah, hiding things. Like these are massive. And early days, you might just think, oh, it doesn't matter. But actually, these are really big things that can cause problems later on.
Yeah, 100%. And like you said, those things will just kind of trickle later on down the line.
Yeah.
So good to kind of pick up on them earlier on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening today.
Yeah, thank you.
And if you've got any questions for us, then please write in. It's always nice to have questions that we can answer.
Yes.
And also please subscribe so that you can be notified on any future episodes.
Yes, please. Thank you.